Sometimes I read a book and I'm like, dang, I would love to hang out with this author. And I will say that that doesn't happen that often. I read a lot of horror, so that could be one of the reasons. Like, oh, what's going on in your brain? Let's not hang out. But today I want to talk about a book I read that I absolutely loved and adored. It's called If You Can't Take the Heat, Tales of Food, Feminism, and Fury by Geraldine DeRuiter. Geraldine DeRuiter is a food blogger and writer. She kind of rose from amidst the other food bloggers when she wrote about how she made these cinnamon buns that were in a apology letter from Mario Batali after he had a bunch of sexual harassment allegations made against him. So she made this recipe and also wrote an essay. It got a lot of media attention and kind of put her in the spotlight, whether she wanted it or not. I randomly found this book and I'm so happy I did. I follow Kristen Johnston, the actress, over on Threads, and she had mentioned this book. And so I looked up the synopsis and I was like, this sounds pretty fantastic. And so I picked it up and it's so good. It's so funny. It's blunt. It's honest. And it's, aimed at taking down the patriarchy. Just everything about it. Like, she talks about all these different things, from like her first food memory, dating, and how women are looked at in the food industry, whether as a professional or as someone at home making the food at home for their family, and how things are viewed and skewed and all of that, and calls a light to it, which is really cool. Talking about her love of Red Lobster and those cheesy biscuits that they have there at Red Lobster. Who's to say that we all haven't wrapped some in a napkin and put it in a pocket or purse that made its way home with us from the restaurant? Talking about food in her family and growing up, talking about ex-boyfriends and Catholicism and just all kinds of subject matter. And the way she writes about it and talks about it is fantastic. You get into the book and she talks about her first food memory, but she also talks about all these other chefs that they talk about their first food memories. And she's like, they have to be effing lying because, it's always something all like fancy. It's like dauphinoise, potatoes, with a champagne and glace. I'm just making up these details right now. Pheasant under glass, floated with gold, leaf, edibleness. I don't know what I don't know. I'm trying to make up something fancy and my brain's just not putting the pieces together very well right now. But anyways, so they all say it's some fancy schmancy thing. And she's like, this has to be a lie. Your first food memory, I mean, you're a child, right? Right? So she talks about her first food memory where she remembers gazing up at the sink, and there upon it was this tube. She grasped it with her chubby little biscuit or cake hands and grabbed this tube of minty goodness and just started squeezing it into her mouth. It's like, yes, honestly, really? These other chefs are out here just eating fancy stuff. Yeah, right. That's the first food memory. Maybe, I'm sure there could be a small percentage if that's actually true for her, but probably the rest of it's just BS. It's like, yeah, maybe when you were quite a bit older. Because, yeah, my first food memories were, one, eating Play-Doh, as most of us, I assume, did. Unless it's just me. Maybe you guys are going to lie about it and say you never tried to taste a Play-Doh, but whatever. Maybe I'm the lone Play-Doh eater, but I don't buy it. What really sticks out was I loved Big Boy spaghetti. And I don't know how far across the country Big Boy restaurants go, but here in Michigan, Big Boy's is like a chain. That was one of my favorite places growing up, and I loved their spaghetti, which now when I think about it, it grosses me out. I would never their spaghetti now. Back then, I loved it. Her first food memory is toothpaste. And that should give you an idea of where this book will go and the humor that comes along with it. And it's just fantastic. It's like, when you encounter writing like that it's funny, it's addictive, you connect with it. It's very easy to connect with it too. Unless you're like a old white patriarchal man, then you probably would not connect with it. And I wouldn't suggest reading it for those those particular people. I loved it. I would highly recommend this to everyone, whether you like food or not. It's just, I don't know, I look at her life and life in general and like the crap that goes on and the thoughts in our mind that some of these I'm sure we all share. So if you like books that are just bluntly honest and funny, that talk about food, that are taking down the patriarchy one page at a time, and overall, fan-flippin-tastic read. So I'm thinking about doing like, out of all the nonfiction books I read this year, at the end of the year, doing like a top 5. This might be number 1. I think this one might be number 1. I can't say that with 100% certainty, but I really think this would probably be my number 1 nonfiction book. If you are a fan of nonfiction books, the next video coming up will be about another nonfiction book. So stick around, check it out. And if you have fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.